Welcome to the Next Chapter podcast. If you are a professional or an entrepreneur that's ready to dive headfirst into your next chapter of business success and create a kick-ass freaking life, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Rob Murgatroyd, and I'll be bringing you some game-changing insights, great interviews, and real-life transformations of people who have made a leap into their next chapter. Strap in and let's get this party started. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Next Chapter podcast. All right, so this week, I want to talk about the idea of brands. A lot of you you're considering a next chapter. You know, maybe you're a professional, you've been doing something for a while, or you're trying to expand or grow your business, and maybe you want to bring it online. There's a million different situations that you might be in. But at the end of the day, there's a brand that is likely being put forth in your next chapter. And I've always really struggled with trying to understand what brand is, like, how does Nike do what they do? Like, what is a swoosh? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how has that all come together? And, I'm going to have this discussion with you through the lens of what my wife and I are working on now. We've had a lot of evolutions. We started with a company called Jet Set Life, where we made travel videos, and then I moved into doing events with Work Hard, Play Hard, and now I've got this podcast, Next Chapter, and there's a lot of different things all over the place, and it was really, really confusing for me to try and understand it all. And so I reached out to a friend of mine who is my coach, and I said, man, I'm really frustrated. I'm trying to figure this out. And he's like, well, what's the frustration? And I'm like, my brand, like, I don't even know what it is. It's like, I've got this Next Chapter podcast, and I've got Friday Date podcast, and I host events in Italy. I'm writing a book about Italy. I like talking about Enough is Enough. We're working on guidebooks. Like what is the brand? And he said, look, man, a brand is a set of values. I said, all right, a brand is a set of values. He said, a brand is like whatever you make it. He said, so like, think about Gucci, because you're in Italy. He's a good coach. He's smart. He applied it to me. And he said, so like, what the fuck is Gucci? They sell scarves, cologne, belts, coffee table books. Like what is that? Or Burberry, sunglasses, cologne, coats. What about like bourbon? There's a brand called Pappy Van Winkle. They sell bourbon, cigars, and watches and glassware. They just decided at some point that is their brands. And these are representations or manifestations of that brand's at this particular moment in time. And there becomes a time where perhaps there is a brand's evolution, where things change. So that really gave me peace. And then so I was like, okay, let me not make this complicated. How do I, put this all together into one idea? Because I'm doing coaching and events and writing books, and it felt very disparate to me. I was like all over the place. And I just shortened it. And I said, okay, I coach, I host events in Italy, and I write books. That's it. 3 things. I coach, I host events in Italy, and I write books. And I went, okay, now let me break this down a little bit more. And so on my whiteboard in my office, I just wrote down what my brand is. And I said, okay, so the brand is centered around the idea that enough is enough when work erodes the bandwidth that you've established for a great life. Like, that messaging to me feels like the essence, the core, what's at the center of my brands. because listen, we could just keep working, right? We could miss all the things in our life because we're allowing work to erode the bandwidth that we've established for a great life. And so for me, that means something. And hopefully for people that listen to it, I communicate it in such a way that it means something for them as well. And then I looked and I was like, okay, well, coaching, like what am I doing there? Well, I'm mostly coaching entrepreneurs. They all want to grow their business. Every entrepreneur wants to grow their business in some way. And they want to work on keeping their work-life balance on point. If somebody just wants a business coach, like a chiropractor, a lawyer, whatever, they'll go to a consultant, right? But what I'm doing that's a little bit unique is I'm helping them grow their business because I've got 20 years as a chiropractor and opening up multiple brick and mortar businesses, and I got another decade and a half on doing online businesses. So I understand how to grow a business, but I also, at this stage of my life, am extremely focused on making sure that my work-life balance is on point. And more particularly, I'm looking at work-life imbalance. Then I looked and said, okay, well, what about the podcast? Well, what you're listening to now is simply me helping you with strategies that can help you in your next chapter, which is basically what I opened with, the podcast. And whatever that happens to be. I mean, we're all in transition all the time. There's always something that we're evolving into. And then I looked at the events and I said, okay, well, why am I doing these events? Well, it all goes back to the brand, right? Italy showcases how to live well better than any place I know. I mean, it's called La Dolce Vita, which means the sweet life, for a reason. And, if you like pizza, they invented it. You know what I mean? So now it's all starting to come together for me. And then I went, okay, well, I'm writing this book. The book is I Like You Better in Italy is the name of the book. Well, why is that important to the brand? Well, it's the story of me learning how more didn't make me any happier. And it's me learning what truly matters in life. And it's an anchor book. It's a bigger book that really explains that journey. And then I'm going to follow it up with more of a how-to book, which will be called Enough is Enough. And it'll be more practical for people that are like, okay, great. I got this idea of, what you put forth and I Like You Better in Italy, but how the hell do I apply it to myself? So, there'll be a how-to book, which will come with a workbook and an audio book. And then the Ciao Amore fits right into it, which is going to be the name of the guidebook. And we're going to start there with how to travel to Italy. And it'll be stories from us living here in Italy and tips. And then we'll follow it up with a guidebook series, which will be Ciao Amore Florence, Ciao Amore Rome. And the stories about Italy and where to go. So I laid all of this out for you so that if you're in the situation that I was in, which is feeling like you don't know what your brand is and you feel like you're all over the place, don't be so hard on yourself, because being all over the place may actually be what your brand is. Because like I started from the beginning, a brand is simply just a set of values. And more than that, it's what you decide the brand to be. So if you are considering getting some coaching for your next chapter, shoot me a DM and I will jump on the phone with you and we can do a Zoom and we can see if my coaching is a fit for you. All right, that's it, everybody. Have a great week and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Look, I've been there, craving something different as a professional. Maybe you want to level up your business. Maybe you love what you do, but you need some time freedom. Or maybe you're ready to say goodbye to it all and dive into a totally new world of business. Either way, I've got you covered. My coaching programs will help you reverse engineer a plan that will help you take the next step in creating the success and life you've always dreamed of. In the show notes, you'll see a link for a one-on-one coaching as well as group coaching. Just hit up one of those links in the show notes and we'll jump on a free discovery call.